This happened a couple of years ago, right before school ended. It was the last day of 8th grade, the kind of day you'd expect. Excitement, bittersweet goodbyes, chaos everywhere. Everyone was running around, scribbling signatures and cheesy messages in each other's yearbooks. My middle school was huge, easily over 1,000 students. To manage the chaos, teachers collected yearbooks and passed them around classrooms. Anyone could write anything in anyone else's book. The teachers tried to control it, but a few kids always found ways to be cruel. At the end of the day, I flipped through my yearbook eagerly. There were the usual goofy messages, some from close friends, others from kids I barely knew. But one note made me freeze. It was a signature below the photo of someone I had never seen before. Samuel Robinson III, it read. And underneath, a message. Hags, I'll be seeing you again. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know this kid. I'd never spoken to him. I stared at the page for a while, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a prank, a mistake, but the tone, it was deliberate, personal. I shoved it out of my mind. The school year was over. There was nothing I could do. That evening, I had a sleepover in my basement with my best friends, Kevin, David, and Kieran. We ate Doritos, played Call of Duty, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. My parents were 3 floors above us, so we had free reign. Around 2 a.m., as I was messing with my dad's rowing machine, there was a sharp knock at the storm door. The sound froze me. Who knocks at a storm door this late? It kept knocking in a rhythmic pattern, like it was deliberately loud, deliberate, patient. Kieran, oblivious to the tension, called out, "Who's there?" I wanted to hit him. That voice broadcasted to whoever was outside that we were down here. A muffled, cheerful-sounding voice answered. "Come around to the back door." It was high-pitched, almost friendly. Teenaged. Genuine. Not pretending. I was scared, but my friends insisted I check it out. Reluctantly, I crept upstairs. Through the narrow glass by the door, I saw a shadow under the dim porch light. As I drew closer, my stomach dropped. It was him, Samuel Robinson III. My friends wanted to open the door. I refused. I told them who it was and explained the yearbook message. Their excitement faded, replaced with unease. Sam was still outside, motioning for me to come to the window. I cracked open the kitchen window, just slightly. "Oh, so you got my message," he said, introducing himself as Sam. He went on to explain that he had been watching me from afar and that we could have been good friends. I agreed cautiously, just to avoid angering him. Then I asked the only logical question. "How do you know where I live?" No answer. David, frustrated, called him a creepy stalker. Sam's smile disappeared. It twisted into something ugly. Hatred. He screamed, spitting words about my friends, my family, things only someone watching me would know. He tried to force the window open. I slammed it shut, locking it. He snarled, pounding on the glass like a trapped animal. Seconds from shattering it, my parents came barreling down the stairs. Sam bolted before they reached the door. The next day, the school confirmed something disturbing. Sam had been expelled weeks earlier. His yearbook photo was a remnant, yet he had snuck in to leave that message. How he knew my address? Still a mystery. I never saw him again, but the fear lingered. Every shadow, every knock at the door, triggered the memory. Fast forward to high school. My friend Garrett, unhinged, aggressive, unpredictable, was the source of the next nightmare. It was the last day of senior year, May 2019. Graduation was a few days away, but the school had this tradition: gather at the clock tower courtyard to drink, party, and celebrate being done. Over 1,000 people were packed into the courtyard. Garrett thrived in chaos. I tried to keep pace, but stay out of trouble. After the courtyard, we walked home. A homeless man approached, ranting, obviously high. We avoided him, except Garrett, who shouted back. The man charged. Garrett lunged. I pulled him back. The man bolted. Garrett laughed. We thought it was over. But a few blocks from my house, I noticed the back gate was wide open, tied previously with a thin strand of twine. I knew instantly someone had opened it deliberately. Before I could react, a rope was around my throat. Panic, flailing, choking. I swung my legs backward, throwing the attacker off. He hit the ground. Blood streamed down my face. Somehow, I scrambled free. He fled. No trace. Weeks later, hospital visits, shots, police reports, nothing came of it. No suspect, no evidence. Only fear remained. Years earlier, in middle school, there was Sven. 7th grade. Homeroom. Back corner of every classroom. Oversized hoodie, cargo shorts. Quiet. Strange. Alone. The last day of school was chaotic. Classes mixed, students roaming, messing with teachers. I ended up in a room with Sven. He was more agitated than usual, constantly scanning the room, tapping his foot aggressively. Teachers whispered. Students left. The fire alarm went off. Evacuations. Police arrived. Chaos. Rumor. Kids from outside the school had tried to set the building on fire. Tools found. Suspicious activity. Sven? He led them in. I never saw him again. The pattern is clear. Samuel Robinson III, expelled, stalking. Garrett, aggressive, unrestrained. Sven, orchestrating chaos. All began small, almost invisible, but escalated. All left marks, in memory, in fear, in trauma. Even now, years later, shadows trigger memory. Every knock, every fleeting movement outside the window, every unknown presence behind me at night recalls the fear that never left. And I can't help but wonder, how many others like them are out there, waiting, watching, planning? High school traditions are weird. Everyone has one, some harmless, some ridiculous. But for us seniors, the last night before graduation was always different. Dangerous, almost. It wasn't something we ever really talked about outside our small group, and I think that was intentional. Some things are just too dark to share casually. It started on the last day of senior year, May 2019. Finals were over, but graduation wasn't for a few more days. That meant we had a few extra days to act like idiots, and that's exactly what we did. The school's courtyard had this huge clock tower in the center. Tradition dictated that every senior who cared to participate gather there to get drunk, swap stories, and basically try to see how stupid they could get before officially stepping into the real world. I was there with 6 friends, but the person I'm talking about, the one who made the night unforgettable, was Garrett. Garrett was unhinged. When I say unhinged, I don't mean funny wild. I mean chaotic, aggressive, unpredictable. One minute he's laughing with you. The next he's staring you down like you owe him your life. Everyone in our small circle knew it, but you tolerated him because he was loyal in his own strange, terrifying way. That night, the clock tower courtyard was packed. Over 1,000 students, all drunk, screaming, hugging, dancing, spilling drinks, and laughing like it was the end of the world, which for us, it sort of was. We've been celebrating for hours, alcohol in hand, trying to forget the stress of the past 12 years. The air smelled of sweat, cheap perfume, and beer. I remember feeling that electric mix of nostalgia and freedom, a little terrified for the future, but mostly just high on the moment. After leaving the courtyard, we had a walk home through the city streets. It wasn't a long walk, maybe a mile, but the city was quiet at night. Homeless people slept in doorways. The occasional car passed, tires hissing on wet pavement. That's when Garrett decided to do one of his stunts. We were crossing an intersection near a small park when a homeless man suddenly ran up in front of us. He looked tweaked out, eyes wide, muttering nonsense, clearly on something. Most people would just avoid him, but Garrett? Not him. He yelled back at the man. Something aggressive. Something that made me want to hide behind a lamppost. The guy took a step forward, threatening, and the rest of us had to pull Garrett back. But he wasn't done. No, I'll show him, Garrett shouted. Before I could stop him, he sprinted at the man. The homeless guy screamed and bolted, disappearing into the shadows. Garrett turned back toward us, laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever done. We walked the last few blocks cautiously. Everyone was laughing nervously, trying to downplay the adrenaline pumping through our veins. I kept glancing over my shoulder. Something felt off. We arrived at my house. Garrett and I were stumbling from the sidewalk up to the front door. I had ordered DoorDash earlier, and my stomach grumbled for a moment before I remembered it was sitting on the porch. That's when I noticed the back gate was open. We always tied it shut with a small piece of twine. It was flimsy, sure, but enough to keep it closed. Now it was wide open, swinging slightly in the breeze. A pit of dread settled in my stomach. I knew immediately. Someone had opened it deliberately. I dropped my food bag and went around the side of the house to investigate, tipsy and foolish. My legs wobbled as I tried to steady myself. And then, just as I reached the far corner, I felt it. A rope around my neck. Instant panic. My hands flailed trying to grab it. My lungs burned. Garrett's voice, shouting somewhere behind me, barely registered. The rope was rough, cutting into my skin, tightening. I kicked backward with everything I had, hitting my attacker. We fell to the ground, tangled. My face hit the dirt. Blood ran down my cheek from scratch, stinging, mixing with sweat. I scrambled, adrenaline surging. Somehow I twisted and threw him off. He scrambled to his feet, and then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows as fast as he had appeared. I sat there, chest heaving, trying to comprehend what had just happened. My DoorDash sat untouched on the porch. The back gate swung gently, a mocking reminder that someone had been in my yard. I went inside and locked every door and window I could find. Garrett, thankfully, hadn't been hurt, but he was pale, shaking. "Dude, that was insane," he muttered. I nodded but didn't speak. The silence was heavy. Later, at the hospital, I got cleaned up. The cuts weren't deep, but I had to get shots, tetanus, rabies, whatever precautions they needed. The police were called. They asked questions I couldn't answer. No one saw him. No one had a license plate. It was like he vanished into thin air. I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow in my room seemed to twitch. Every creak of the house sounded deliberate. My parents were gone, leaving me and Garrett to process it ourselves. I stared at the ceiling, heart racing, replaying every moment. Weeks passed, and the police couldn't find anything. We moved out shortly after graduation, leaving the city, leaving the memories, but not the fear. Fast forward to middle school, years earlier. This is a separate, but equally strange story, one I can't explain. I was in 7th grade, sitting in homeroom, trying to pay attention to whatever lesson Miss Bell was teaching. The weird kid, let's call him Sven, sat in the back corner. He always did. Oversized burgundy hoodie, cargo shorts, same spot, same posture every day. No friends, no interaction. Always alone. Most of the time, we ignored him. Sometimes kids tried to include him. Sometimes he snapped. Once, a friend caught him slicing worms during recess. Detention followed. The last day of school was chaotic. Kids ran from room to room. Some classes were filled with students from other rooms. A mix-and-match chaos designed to let kids mess with the teachers. I ended up in a class with Sven. He was acting weird, fidgety, tapping his foot aggressively, constantly glancing around, scanning the room. I couldn't tell if he was watching me or someone else. At one point, we were asked to form groups for an end-of-year reflection project. Miss Bell stepped away to answer a call at her desk. Another teacher showed up for a quick whisper in the doorway. After they left, a few students got up and followed the teachers out quietly. Miss Bell returned, shuffled papers. Then, the fire alarm went off. We were all herded outside like nothing had happened. I looked back. Movement. A shadow flicked past a second-story window. Too quick to be anyone we knew. Sirens. Police cars. Officers rushed inside. Chaos. Students evacuated. No buses. Parents called. Rumors later. A group of kids who didn't even attend our school had been planning something. Fire. Tools found. Suspicious activity. And Sven? He had led them in through a side fence during recess. I never saw him again. Looking back, there's a pattern. Garrett, Sven, Sam. Each encounter felt harmless at first. Each person seemed like just another chaotic element in teenage life. But when you connect the dots, it's not harmless. People who watch. People who strike when you're alone. People who find cracks in the normal flow of life to squeeze in terror. And the thing is, even now, after years, after moving towns, after changing schools, the memory of being stalked, attacked, or watched is always there. You feel it in your chest, in your gut, in the hair on the back of your neck. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about all the ways things could have gone worse. About the rope on my neck, the shadow in the window, the kids signing a yearbook before I even knew what danger was. And I can't shake the question, how many of them are still out there, waiting for their next opportunity? You never expect the last day of middle school to follow you home. You never expect a stranger's name, scribbled casually in ink, to feel heavier than every memory you made that year. And you definitely never expect a harmless tradition, a yearbook signature, to become proof that someone was watching you long before you ever noticed them. Because some goodbyes aren't endings. Some are warnings. And sometimes, the scariest words you'll ever read are written by someone who already knows where you live. This happened a couple of years ago, right before school ended, and even now, writing this makes my chest tighten in a way I can't explain. It was the last day of 8th grade, the kind of day everyone romanticizes once it's over. The hallways were loud and chaotic, echoing with laughter, shouting, lockers slamming for the last time. Everyone was riding that strange, emotional high. Excitement mixed with nostalgia, because middle school was officially behind us. People were everywhere, sprinting from classroom to classroom, arms full of yearbooks, shouting names across the hall. Sign mine. Don't forget me. Write something funny. My school was massive, easily over 1,000 students. So to keep things from turning into total anarchy, the teachers collected everyone's yearbooks early in the day. They spread them out across classrooms, passing them around so people could sign them without stampeding the halls. In theory, it was a good system. In practice, it meant anyone could write anything in anyone's yearbook. I'd already heard stories of kids leaving cruel messages for people they hated. Little digs disguised as jokes. Inside jokes meant to humiliate. Teachers try to keep an eye on things, but with that many students, it was impossible to monitor everything. By the time the final bell rang, none of us cared. We were free. When I finally got my yearbook back, I sat on the floor with my friends, flipping through it eagerly. Every page was filled with goofy messages, inside jokes, bad drawings, and promises we all knew we wouldn't keep. Never change. Don't forget me when you're famous. High school's gonna be insane. I was smiling until I wasn't. About halfway through, something caught my eye. A signature, neatly written, careful, almost formal, tucked just beneath a class photo. The face next to it wasn't familiar. I frowned and leaned closer. Samuel Robinson III. I stared at the name, trying to place it. Nothing. No memory. No class. No face that matched the photo. I flipped back to the index, scanned the names again. Still nothing. Then I read the message beneath his name. Hags, I'll be seeing you again. I felt my stomach drop. At first, I laughed nervously. It was probably a joke, right? Some kid I didn't recognize trying to be funny. Still, something about it felt off. Too deliberate. Too confident. I asked around. Hey, do you know a Samuel Robinson? Blank stares. No one recognized him. Eventually, I shrugged it off. Weird kid being weird. End of story. Or so I thought. A few hours later, I was home hosting a sleepover in my basement with my 3 closest friends, Kevin, David, and Kieran. My parents were asleep 3 floors above us, which meant we could be as loud as we wanted. Doritos, soda, Call of Duty, the usual. Time blurred together the way it always does at sleepovers. At some point, just before 2 a.m., we were messing around on my dad's old rowing machine, taking turns and laughing at how ridiculous we looked. That's when we heard it. Knock, 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 sharp, hollow, coming from the storm door. Every single one of us froze. The storm door led directly outside. No one ever used it, and whoever was knocking was doing it carefully, not loud enough to wake my parents. That alone made my skin crawl. The knocking continued, slow and rhythmic. Kieran opened his mouth before I could stop him. Who's there? The words echoed through the basement. My heart dropped into my stomach. He'd just announced to whoever was outside that we were down here. After a long pause, a voice answered, muffled, high-pitched, almost cheerful. Come around to the back door. It sounded like a kid, a teenager, friendly, casual, like someone asking to join the sleepover. My friends were excited. Yo, go check it out. Probably someone we know. Dude, that's creepy but kind of funny. I didn't want to. Every instinct in my body screamed, don't. But they pressured me, so we crept upstairs together, trying not to make sound. I approached the back door slowly, heart pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it upstairs. Through the narrow glass pane beside the door, I saw a silhouette standing under the dim porch light. Then he stepped forward, and my blood ran cold. It was him, the boy from the yearbook, Samuel Robinson III. My friends moved to open the door. I stopped them. I know who that is. I told them everything. The signature, the message. Their mood changed instantly. Sam was still outside, watching us through the glass, smiling. He motioned toward the side of the house, gesturing for me to come closer to the window. I refused to open the door. Instead, I cracked the kitchen window just a few inches. "What do you want?" I asked. "Oh," he said, grinning wider. "So you got my message." He introduced himself as Sam. Told me he'd been watching me from afar. Said we could have been great friends. I nodded, lying through my teeth. Then I asked the question that made everything worse. "How do you know where I live?" His smile vanished. David snapped. "Dude, you're a creepy stalker. Get the hell out of here." Sam's head tilted, confused. Then his face twisted into something terrifying. He screamed about how he hated my friends, how we should all die, how my ex hated me, details he shouldn't have known. He lunged for the window. I slammed it shut and locked it just as he started banging on the glass, snarling like an animal. My parents came rushing downstairs. That's when Sam ran. The next morning, the truth came out. Sam had been expelled weeks earlier. He never should have been at school. The yearbooks were printed before his expulsion, meaning he snuck into the building just to write that message. No one could find him. No records. No address. It was like he never existed. And to this day, I still don't know how he knew where I lived.